Broadcasting live from the moon and back, this is The Coin Chat, the most trusted voice for all things cryptocurrency. Each week we dissect an important issue and cut through the noise and misinformation out there in the world of blockchain, cryptocurrency, and ICOs, capturing the facts that truly matter to you that will give you an edge in this fast-moving emerging market. The who, what, where, when, and how of what you need to know in crypto to get ahead so you don't get left behind. Now here are your co-hosts, financial and crypto experts Yuri Cataldo and Steve Good.
Hey, this is Steve Good on the Coin Chat with Yuri Cataldo, and we are joined today by a Holochain veteran, David Atkinson, the commercial director for Holochain. So, David, welcome to the Coin Chat.
Thank you very much, guys.
Great to have you. So David, I think we're excited about what Holochain's been doing. There's been a lot of news, about a hype, a lot of excitement about the project, and we just wanted to dig in a little bit more and really get to know more about what Holochain's been doing, especially since the ICO itself, which you guys finished in April 2018, raising $20 million. So maybe to start.
Wait, actually, David. Oh, sorry. I was going to say, before you do that, could you just, for our listeners who are less familiar with your project, how would you describe what Holochain does and is?
Sure. Okay. So you've just asked me the 30-minute question. And
right.
I will.
Well, we told you we were going to ask easy questions today, but we had to start with the hardest one first.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I think the simplest way to think about Holochain, there's a couple of different levels. Is when we're usually thinking about a blockchain style project, we're thinking about a protocol by which a number of nodes need to agree on their version of the state of truth, which we call consensus. And we might have complete consensus, we might have sharded consensus, but effectively that is the mechanism by which we can move to this trustless computing environment. Holochain says, well, actually, let's take this problem and look at it a little bit differently. So what we say is actually we've built an application framework to build distributed applications upon. Right? And so having an application framework, and then by separating out the currency layer from the technology layer, and by introducing this idea of agent centricity, Holochain effectively allows you to build distributed applications without having to have global consensus. So it's an open source distributed application software, but it means that you can build distributed apps in a trustless environment, so you don't have to control or own the nodes rather than just in a trusted environment. So that innovation has been brewing for a while, and our commitment to the community was that we built an alpha of Holochain before we'd done the fundraising, and that we will build Holochain as an open source initiative. And to meet this commitment, we then designed Holo. Right? And so Holo is a world that says not everybody is going to be able to run a Holochain node. Like Steve, I think the common example of like, what is my grandma going to be able to do with her crypto wallet or on an exchange?
For sure.
Maybe a lot of damage. Well, on a Holochain, we're saying, well, do you know what? Grandma isn't going to run a Holochain node today.
She's not?
But she still knows how to browse the web.
How am I going to break the news to my grandma that she's not going to
today?
Run a node? Sorry, Grandma, no nodes for you. Are you still
in control of her? Exactly. You're in control of her wallet and her keys, are you?
No.
Yeah.
Totally is.
So, yeah.
So what we built was Holo. And Holo is a distributed hosting application. It's built on top of Holochain, and it's kind of the first major Holochain application. And Holo has two things. So it has a currency called Holofuel, which I won't get into, but you can look at the white paper, ask me any questions if you want in the future. And it has this actual application, which allows anybody to access a distributed application through a web browser or through an app, without me even knowing they're running a distributed application. So when you combine the power of this completely peer-to-peer this application framework with a distributed hosting environment, you get a world that feels like the internet today, but powered by what we will power the internet of tomorrow.
So in the Holochain environment, you have these agents, right, that are effectively what the apps connect to, and the agents are what are effectively driving the consensus for the applications to run. Is that a correct way of saying it?
Yeah, look, Holochain it's a multi-agent system. So right. What we say is that, and there's a comparisons I think that the viewers can read about the difference between agent centricity and data centricity. Agent centricity mimics natural systems patterns, which says there's no absolute truth. There's just everybody's version of the truth.
Yep.
And so what we've designed is then a system where various people, actors, agents, if you will, on an application speak. That could be a transaction, it could be typing, it could be any form of exchange.
Right.
And what we say is what needs to happen for any interaction to be valid is that, say, Steve, you and I are creating some kind of exchange. What is required is that I initiate, you receive, we countersign, and we're saying that parties are playing by the rules of the application at that time.
So
then, depending on the application, there's validation. Oh yeah.
No, so the reason I was asking about that is that typically if I think of consensus in the decentralized environment, a Bitcoin blockchain, Ethereum kind of environment, then the entire world of computers are all working on the same blockchain block at the same time and validating that block, and it's such that it's very hard to get a 51% attack because it's distributed so well or decentralized. So what I'm wondering about, and this is something that wasn't evident, 100% evident from reading through all your materials and talking to people, and this is why I just wanted to ask this, is how do you prevent that kind of 51% attack at the agent level when it's an application that's just verifying with a single agent and you don't have that verification process occurring across or is there some sort of multi-node type verification that occurs at the app transaction level?
Yep. So, yeah, actually, so we spoke about this a little on the AMA last week.
Right.
One of the major differences is because we're not trying to achieve a global consensus, then you're never going to be able to attack 51% of the network to start with, because the transactions are just occurring between the transacting parties and whatever rules the application sets for validating those transactions. So you might say that an application might require full consensus for all nodes running that application. But that is just that application. That is not the entirety of the applications running on the architecture.
Because you're isolating everything down to each individual application one by one. So even if someone tries to attack the Holochain network, it'd be irrelevant because it's actually an agent-centric model where all the agents are communicating with one another and each agent is working with a specific app. So it's a peer-to-peer relationship. So you'd have to go and attack that specific application only to do damage. So if I decided to go and attack that app, how do you protect that app from being attacked such that if it was a banking transaction or a social media transaction, how do you do it so that it doesn't get interrupted then if it's at the app level?
For example, from a 51% attack?
Yeah, as an example, or some sort of, there's lots of different ways of attacking systems nowadays. I just wondered whether there's any kind of, because if you keep going down to the lowest level of detail, which in this case is at the app level, then the app is what needs to be the most secure. And of course, if people tried to attack the app by having multiple people using the same app, and I'll try to throw in bad data, is there a way that you could disrupt at the app to agent level, or is that something that's probably not likely to occur because of the way it's designed?
Exactly. So the technical guys will definitely be incredibly unhappy with the answer that I give here. So apologize for. Well,
we can have them come on the show the next time and give us the technical answer, and we'll just be bewildered, which is fine. We're not techies either.
The thing is,
I apologize in advance to David's responses on anything technical.
Exactly.
Disclaimer at the bottom.
Exactly. It comes down to, again, the way a transaction is designed within Holochain, you would have to attack at the creation of transaction level or then attack the agent, because the consensus then, however it is achieved or whatever forms of validation, is a clear way of describing it in a Holochain application. It's propagated over a period of time across all of the nodes, because the key is to understand that transaction at that time happened in accordance with the rules of the application and was valid. So you can set whatever validation rules you want on the transaction, but a lot of the time it's payments. We're really saying, Steve, do you have the money that you say you have in your wallet? And David, do you have the thing that you're giving in exchange for the money? If so, make the transaction. Validation occurs, test the rules that were applied, test the validation, to test the validity of the transaction. And so the attacks would really have to come at the agent level. So there's definitely opportunity for things like malicious actors, either at creating the transaction or in terms of validation. And that's where we've built in a warrant system. And effectively, the Holochain, especially through Holo, we're saying we're not interested in anonymous interaction. So when we're thinking about the way, there's plenty of amazing solutions for anonymous payments and anonymous transactions. And Holo is saying, well, actually, there's also a world where we want to be who we are, and based on our identity, receive increased reputation, receive benefits in terms of credit, et cetera, in distributed applications. So one of the ways we're addressing things like bad actors through warrant system is by connecting your ability to have impact, grow businesses, and build reputation on the system. Well, you've actually got a reputation to manage and uphold, and that's all built into Holochain. So identity is a foundational piece of thinking in Holochain rather than a bolt-on.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought this up, because actually one of the other things that I understand is you have this sort of proof of service model. I think that's what you were alluding to just now. Is that right?
Yeah, partially. So
the basically where you give rewards to people based on their participation, and it's not about someone participating, but how much response they get for that participation. Is that the right way of expressing it?
Yeah, the simplest way is like we're rewarding value-added work, and so the way proof of service works. Remember, this is all on Holo. Right. Holochain is just open source distributed application framework. Right. So it doesn't. But in the hosting environment, we have to reward the hosts who serve applications to end users that don't want to run Holochain through a web browser. So what happens is an application will be running, and instead of spending their money on Azure or Amazon Web Services or some other application hosting, they will say, okay, we want to host through Holo. And so they will pay, say, $100 a month for their hosting. And every time there's a request from a user, a host will meet that request. The $100 that was paid by the application, which is held on reserve, will then be distributed through Holofuel, which is the micropayment currency that powers the Holo network, to the host that was providing the hosting. So it's like web hosting, except it's fully distributed web hosting. And obviously all of these nodes that are running Holo aren't within our organization. It's pure edge computing solution. So what we're rewarding is the service of meeting the request that a user made for information to be passed through a web browser. The host met that request, and so they receive a micropayment. So the service is hosting effectively, and Holo Network provides.
So you're rewarding the service that's running, not the people that are participating.
Absolutely. We're rewarding the services running, and it's for meaningful work. It's not for managing the network. It is for providing the service that the end user requests of the network. And so it's compute power.
I'm going to flip this around, because I always try to think about how does one scam this, or how does one game this, right? So I'm thinking the other way around. So you put the service up, and now I'm going to game this. So I'm going to go get a bunch of people to go and use the service and vote. And it's the best service ever. So I'm getting rewarded more than I should. How do you prevent that?
Well, it's probably incentives are more clearly aligned for within Holo than a lot of the other protocols out there. Because firstly, gaming Holo, they're gaming an application that's running on top of Holo. And so say it's an application that involves